to the community. Sitting there on the departmental side, you can always argue whether we're preparing well enough or planning well enough for capital, but you know, we haven't done poorly in the first 15 years. We've got a lot of good reserves, and we've got some projects done, you know,
We want to.
Welcome, everybody. Wednesday, March 8th, 2023, Board of Selectmen budget meeting. Workshop. I will hand it off to Mark.
Thank you, Bob. I just want to point out really quickly on the budget schedule. Obviously, tonight is March 8th, 2023. Originally, all that it said was third draft of the budget presented. We added to that plus capital expenditures. So I just want to point that out. Vika did give us the updated third budget draft that she learned from the changes from last time. Vika, did you have any comments before we get started on this in general?
I don't think so. I think just kind of, as you have questions, let me know.
Okay. Unless the board has a wish of how this meeting goes, I thought I would just touch on each department very quickly. I'm not going to give you each a turn. If you want to have a turn in the department, then please raise your hand. We'll start with Department 1300, Administrative Board of Selectmen. I don't think we changed anything on any of the line items. Is that correct? Yes. Questions from anyone or comments on this division? Yeah.
When do we make a final decision about the COLA?
Well, that's up to you guys. I think you just need to do it before he can take it back to the town office for final draft. So,
Which is when?
we've got one more shot at glancing at this budget. So the budget schedule, basically,
First draft is the 5th.
April 5th?
Yeah.
When do you incorporate the school budget?
The school does a joint budget with us on the 11th, so they will give me their numbers prior to that, and I'll put them in here. And then the 11th will be the first time that you really see all of the numbers together.
And do you compare their COLA increases with the towns typically?
So in the past, the school has kind of done their own thing. This year, the superintendent did reach out to me and ask me what the town recommendation was going to be, and then asked me to keep her updated if that number changes, because they like to stay in line.
Yeah, because I think when we were on the school committee, we tried to be consistent.
I have one more general question, if I could. Sure. So if you go to page 38 at the end of capital improvements, if you look at the old bottom line, 2023 budget versus 2024 initial.
yeah,
Is it accurate to say that 3,729,000 was the total non-school budget for 2023, and 3,557,872 is the total non-school current budget for 2024?
That's incorrect. The 3.7 is town and school, so that's the total budget for both.
But the school's not, we don't have a school budget yet.
You don't have the school budget yet, but if you look at these numbers, for the initial 2024, the numbers are what they were last year.
Okay,
And so until the school gives me the information, so this $3.5 million number is included with the school budgets based on last year's numbers.
So unless the school budget goes up by $160,000, we are at or below last year's
Below,
budget.
correct.
Thank you.
Yeah, so tentatively, that's kind of where we are, unless the school budget changes and or we add to the town side.
And I did, at the beginning of the process, prior to the first capital discussion, reached out to Ann to ask if they're gonna have any major expenditures that they're anticipating to put into, capital reserve, and she said at this point they don't. So we're not, as of yet, planning to have any large numbers going to capital.
Thank you.
And so to answer your question, from my perspective anyway, Bob, in my opinion, the fourth draft of the budget is April 5th. That might be a good time for you and other board members to consider saying, I'm fine with the 5% or not. And then you get one more quick glance at it on May 3rd. That one's going to be pretty much, in my opinion, unless you disagree with this, Vika, close to where we're gonna wanna be with this budget, or done.
Yes, because it needs to go very shortly after that. It needs to go to the town attorney, who needs some time to make sure that all the language is appropriate. Because once these numbers are as close to final, I have to go in and I have to type up the annual report. The annual warrant, and put all that in, and then send it to the town attorney, and then she needs some time to look over it. And then we're required to have it finalized and available, prior to a town meeting.
Yeah, so in other words, either after the fourth presentation of the budget or after the school meeting with the school committee, it's probably a good time for each board member to decide on anything that they want to decide on like that. And I'm still open, by the way, to suggestions of how we want to have a structure for the meeting with the school, given the fact that they were a little less than pleased with the outcome last time possibly. So keep that in mind, especially members with experience on the school board. I'm not sure what the expectations are. Maybe we could feel out Jeff Putnam, who's the chairperson? Or
Jeff.
Jeff. And, I don't think that meeting needs to be rigorous. Maybe we made it a little too rigorous last time. I'm not sure, but I'm open to suggestions for that.
And we have a budget before that meeting, so we have something to look at prior to the meeting, right?
Their budget.
Yeah,
That's the plan is, just like you received with these a few days in advance, that, I hope that, that happens, but that is all based on whether I'm able to get the numbers, from the school. So they know that this is kind of the step in the process, so hopefully it staggers that way.
Yes, sir.
I just wanted, from representing the rec center tonight, so there's no confusion. Is there, I don't want to change your agenda or anything, but is there any time for the rec center this evening?
Sure. Would you want me to?
Around 7:55.
Yeah, right. I'll be done. I'll be done.
Are you requesting to jump ahead to contribution? Possible?
If you're okay with that, I definitely would do that, because I get out of your hair.
Okay, no questions, I'm assuming, I don't know if you have a budget or not, Steve, but no questions from anyone on administration, board of selectmen, Department 1300?
Correct.
Let's go to contributions. Page 16, contributions, we left it where we left it. I believe Steve Affront would like us to have a quick discussion about the big rec center. They came last time on Saturday, requested an increase of $10,000, which was not approved thus far. They have supplied us with more financial sheets which I breezed through, but that's not my strength. So Not that I didn't look at them, I did look at them. So, you like to say anything before we discuss this? Go ahead.
I tried to give the information that was available for the questions that you asked, and I wanted to make sure that it was really clear that I'm willing to provide, whether it's for this round or even in the future, as long as I'm involved with the rec center. Any financial information or questions, I'm happy to do research and get information. So I wanted to make sure that that was clear. And then in the letter, I did two things from like a summary review, because some people may not want to, get all into the 990 tax returns that I sent. And so I did a executive summary report for the past 3 years. And then I just did a general quick synopsis letter as far as the perspective of where we are with the rec and what we're trying to do, that I'm working with the board. And then I also printed out a larger representation of the board. This is the largest board that I've ever had. This is my third board. And so we have quite a board where since 2019, this is the first time that we've had committees, actual committees assigned to the different areas, the major areas. So from when I first started in 2019, which was pretty much a fiasco year for me, we've come a long way, I should say, with our third round of board members. But again, I just want to make sure whether the rec is successful this year with this request or in the future, we really want to work hard at providing the information that's important to the town government to make its proper decisions for the best interest of the town. So,
Thank you, Steve. Any specific questions for Steve from select board member? Go ahead.
So Steve, thank you for these actuals for 2021 and 2022. Just a few questions. There was depreciation expense in 2021 of 46,000,
Yes.
no depreciation expense in 2022?
Right, I saw that, and that wasn't on the particular reports, so I didn't feel comfortable modifying it, but I gave you as it printed out, so I'm sure it's done in the 2022. Well, that would be the 990 that I did not provide, right? So 2022 990 isn't complete yet, so you didn't get the 2022 990 has not been completed yet, so that's why that depreciation isn't in there, because that goes with 990. Sorry.
2022 990 is not due till April 15th, or
2022.
later on in the year. Yeah.
Yes, it's not done yet.
Okay, that explains that.
Yep.
On both 2021 and 2022, you've got items listed under grant expense for Kids Place at 11,000 in 2022, for Fellow and Patio for 31,000 in operating in 2021. I've always understood grant expense to be the cost of writing grants. It sounds like that's where you're putting money that the rec is contributing toward things that are also funded by grants. Is that how that's being used, or?
Currently the grant expense, it should, in a perfect scenario, we have a grant entry under revenue of grant revenue, and the grant revenue, in a perfect world, the grant revenue and the grant expense would wash itself out. So, but it doesn't always work out that way, but that's how this particular report. It's a direct expenses for, not to write the grant, but the actual, what the grant was achieved.
Got it.
What was achieved by the grant.
Payroll, that kind of, okay,
What
I
were
get
the
it.
items, whatever project was done by that grant.
Yep.
Would be listed under the grant expenses.
All right, then on 2021 on page 2 at the bottom of the page, forgiveness of debt income.
Yeah, that's the COVID years. there were PPP.
Okay.
Grant, and so there was a while there where, it was a loan, and then eventually the government, forgave the loan. And it
Okay.
turned into from a loan to a grant.
All right, and then on the last page of each of them next to each other, so in 2021, the town of Shabig contributed 20,000 to Kids Place, 56,500 to operating. In 2022, it's broken out differently, and it shows 20 to Kids Place, 48 to operating, and 10 to pool, whereas there was none to pool in 2021,
Correct.
for a total of 76.5 in 2021 and 78 in 2022. So why did we start allocating to the pool?
As the rec center, the pool, anything to the right of operating the pool, the teen center, they could, in the past, a lot of the pool items for both, a lot of the items related to the pool and the teen center in the past, prior to 2019, were coming in under the operating category. And so it's been a process of trying to represent how the funds are being used. So rather than keep everything under operating, we've been breaking things out more specifically.
Got it.
The rec center as a organization decided to take that appropriate $10,000 of the total of money that the town appropriated and kind of put that towards pool expenses.
Got it.
So we're just trying to represent it. I know the town doesn't represent it that way, but that's kind of how we would be representing it when we get it.
So there's a couple more questions. You mentioned in the last meeting, one of the Kids Place staff was spending some time doing program work.
Yes, Lily, she's the assistant teacher. We had a dip in the number of children that were coming to a Kids Place, so we reappropriated some of her time at the rec center to, rather than having her drop off, we had her work at the rec, 'cause we're short programming.
So that was in actual 2022.
That's this, well, yeah, at the end of 2022, it's really 2023, is
Okay.
not really 2022, 2023.
So in your actual numbers, does her salary,
In
that
2020
portion of it get moved over to OpEx?
Yes, in 2023 it does, in 2022, it really didn't happen until 2023. We were planning for it in 2022, but it didn't start until 2023,
Okay.
January.
All right.
Yes, so her work salary, we took out basically 8 hours of her Kids Place time and moved that over to rec center time.
Okay.
And it's being paid under the rec center.
Benefits as well?
Not, benefits we haven't done, just the hourly rate at this point in time. Because she's still classified, she's still classed as a full-time position straight through, so it won't change. But in theory, yeah, we could take, once we figure out the total number of hours that year, we could reappropriate.
Yeah.
healthcare benefits.
And then lastly, so I was kind of shocked to get to the bottom line. In 2021, you're showing a net revenue of 50K, and in 2022, you're showing a net revenue of 25K.
Those numbers are, yeah, the 2021 is through, the 990 is all the way through 2022. That may change a little bit, but yes, it's generally, that is true. Both those statements are true, what you just said. Yes.
So it leaves me wondering why you're asking for an increase for 2023.
Based on our current, that would go back to the 2023 budget. But yes, and the amount of, the other points that I brought out in my letter, some of our capital expenditures and programs that we're working with now, the amount of cash. This year, 2023 is a pretty large amount of money being spent, both in capital and some other areas. So we're a little concerned too on the overall expenditures for both Kids Place and, payroll expenditures are much different than in 2023 than they were in 2022 and 2023. 2022 and 2021, sorry.
Understood. Yeah. So that 74K of profit, did that roll into the endowment? Is it in the checkbook?
Yes, we have rules as far as, we've been contributing $27,000 a year to the capital account. So we have certain rules that we abide by. So yes, those things still take place. Other than that, those rules it would be in our operating funds and not in the regular operating funds.
So the reason I'm asking all those questions is that it's just,
Totally understand.
I'm really having a hard time with the prior year's amounts, given the excess of revenue over expense. I'm not gonna call it profit, 'cause it's a nonprofit organization.
Yeah.
But that excess of revenue over expense, you could argue that a portion of that, or you could argue that all of it is a portion of what the town has contributed, and that excess is going into either the checkbook or the endowment. And I don't think that is the intent of the taxpayers as we've understood it today.
Yeah, it's definitely not going in the endowment because we don't use those funds. The endowment is basically self-funded. We don't add, we only take out funds, we don't add funds into that endowment category. So other than contributing to the capital fund or in the operating checking account, we wouldn't go into the endowment.
So the point I want to make to the board is we've always worked off of budgets in the past. This year we asked for actuals. The budget showed for 2023 a $10,000 loss. The actuals show a dramatically different picture. And I'm not trying to attack the rec center, but I am saying we need to focus on actuals and budgets as we look forward, because this is not our money we're spending here. So, I'm done.
Good point. Thank you, Bob and Steve, for answering those questions. Anybody else? Go ahead.
Well, and I guess I still had a little, I appreciate all the information you provided, but maybe you could run us through the January to December 2022 statement of activity. You got that one? And so starting off with the top, so with the revenues, you have a line called donations on the very top line. And those are all cash donations to the rec center, or what is that? You have 18, almost 19,000 for kids plays, 53,000 for operating, and 10,000 for the pool, and 500 for the team center. Are you on the same sheet?
Yep, I'm looking at it now. So the kids place, right, so $18,918 for kids place, 53,000 for operating, 10,000 for the pool, and 550 for team center. What was your first question on those?
What are those donations?
How are those
Cash
comprised?
donations?
Yep, so there is a small breakdown, in the 53,000, there's a few breakdowns. There's a $700 donation under the camp for golf camp, and then a $20,000 for donations of on the field. So that $20,000 is a single event. That was the on the field event that we had in the summertime. So we had a fundraising event.
So that's the proceeds from that event?
Yes, that $20,700 is the proceeds from that event. The $700 is a donation that was earmarked for the golf camp. And then the $31,945 is basically a combination. We have an annual appeal that we send out in December, and then also cash donations throughout the year. So.
And did you get a recompense grant at all in 2022?
2022, we did not get a recompense grant. If you slide down a little bit, we had some grant monies for the community room because we've been raising money to redo the craft room and make that into a new community room. That's the first room when you come in on the rec center, currently known as the craft room. We had a matching grant, a program where someone donated a matching $10,000 and donated to match to collect $22,000 there. And then we had some pretty big heavy hit supporters that gave us grant monies for kids place, $43,000.
So what's the difference between grant donations of 43,411 versus for kids place?
Yep.
And
versus
donations of 18,918?
Yep. Basically how they come in or how the money has been received. If you have a single, a single donator or maybe two donators that have specific requirements for the use of the money that might spill over into a grant versus when someone just mails a check in and says, I want this to, they may mail $100 check or $1,000 check and says, I want this to be used for Kids Place. That would get posted in as a donation. That would be the $18,000. And then you may get, that 43,000, I believe, is probably 3 people that came together to form a specific cause.
So these are not applications by the rec center to foundations or to federal or state programs. These are,
In these 2 scenarios, no. This year, 2022, these were not
okay,
not applied. They were programs. The 22,000 was a program that we created for donations for a specific cause and for the community room.
did the rec center apply to the state for their, they have a program for childcare facilities to apply for grant funds? Did you apply for those?
Yes.
And did you get those?
Yeah, I'm trying to see where that would be. I apologize because I believe that 43,000, part of that 43,000 would be, because I don't see it listed in another way. So it has to be in that grant. We do have a small money that will run out that is in that 43,000. I could break that number down for you.
I'm just trying to understand what I'm reading. I think I'll just keep going through. Then membership fees generated 20, in round numbers, 25,000 for the facility, and then about 6,400 for the pool.
Right.
Is that
So
right?
yeah, so we list the 6,400 is basically your gate revenue in the summertime. That's, cash, that's cash collected at the gate, at the pool. So we've been doing a better job of that because in the past, that money was not recorded correctly as far as posting that. So that 6,400 represents the summer money coming in from the pool. Your membership, your 24,588 is actual people saying, I would like to buy, a student membership or
Right,
adult or
right.
family membership.
So I think that's clear to me. I guess moving down the the tabulation here, the 14,687 for youth programs, those are fees paid by folks to use the youth to
Yeah.
participate?
So that 14,000 predominantly will be your camp revenue. So your summer camps is your youth program revenue.
Okay, and so your total revenue is 245,000,
Correct. Yep.
counting, I mean, a large, more,
Not counting your town, that's not counting the town contribution on this particular report. In
But-
the
and,
executive summary, it will show you that.
right, and of that, 82 plus 65,000 are donations of some sort, right? So it's
Yes.
basically,
Yes.
half of that is some form of donation, okay. And then, sort of moving down, I think I follow. So I heard what you just explained to Bob about the grant expense. So for example, in Kids Place, the grants expense of 10,728, what is that for?
I don't have a laptop, so I can't click off. In my laptop, those numbers are clickable, so if I had my laptop, I could click on. it.
Okay, well, maybe rather than waste everybody's time here, I can come in and talk to you, but I guess,
So all these numbers are clickable, so we can drive that 10,000, I can tell you specifically what every item was blocked.
I guess when I guess to sort of then summarize, because it doesn't seem like we can go through the detail beyond what's on the form here tonight, but I think I just wanted to sort of, so I read your letter, and I think what I understand the priorities for the rec center are, so a couple questions. When we looked at your proposed budget for 2020, for the upcoming year.
Yep.
You had 215,000 for salaries, basically, right, for personnel. So what is in that? And, so there, I know you're an employee and there are 2 employees at Kids Place. Is that, and what else?
Yep, and then so you'll have all your summer employees at that point. So summer employees, we have about 15 people maybe a little bit more, about 15 summer, your summer help equates to about 15 people.
So what is your salary for 2020, in the proposed budget?
It's about $65,000.
And then benefits too, or just salary?
I don't take full benefits, I take just the half benefits because we use the town, we use my wife's insurance policy.
So your salary as executive director is 65,000?
Yeah, that's a ballpark, I don't have that.
And
number.
then the two childcare people, are they paid slightly differently or?
Yeah, so the number is clickable, so I can give you that breakdown earlier.
Yeah, I guess it would be
And it's
good.
on the 992,
I guess it would be good to see the breakdown because that's a big number. And it, like I had said at the meeting, it's more than any of our departments, for example. So,
we have 3 full-time people, and then we have, and then the summer people. So we have a whole budget specifically just for payroll, and I can show you that.
right. And I think how many town employees do we have altogether?
Are you talking about full or part?
Oh, yeah.
I don't know the number off the top of my head because we consider all of the fire department people at town employees too.
But I mean, I'm just trying to sort of compare.
So we're just
Then-
under 20 employees in the summer.
Yeah, though, the model of the rec center historically had been for some people to volunteer their time to support the rec center. And
And
so,
we have that too.
but I guess reading your note, it sounded like you basically have the letter that your priorities are a capital expense to improve the gym and the fitness room. You said $10,000 to install a PFAS water filtration system, $10,000 for a new pool cover, and $50,000 for a privately funded room makeover to upgrade the craft room.
Correct.
And so there we have, basically $100,000 of expenses, right?
Yeah.
And I, as the select person sort of trying to represent the community, I think those are all great programs. But I'm also weighing that against our town office that needs updates and, I think the rec center, these are nice to have, but at the same time, I would put a higher priority myself on some of the work that we need to do in our town office to make it more suitable. So that's kind of, so this is the list of the rec center priorities. And I was a little confused about the water filtration system because there is a grant program through the state of Maine to pay for that. So I'm wondering, and I know you were given all the information. I'm wondering why you haven't pursued that.
The water filtration system, we have not committed for the water filtration system at this point. There's a little bit of controversy with the well and we have currently the three areas, the rec center, kids place, and currently the field. And my board wants me to address that in the proper time. And I have to go through the school board though, because the school board is in charge of the maintenance of the field. It's our position at this point in time that we should not provide water to the field.
So you're gonna come and ask the town for an additional $10,000 and you're gonna turn around and tell the school that they're responsible for treating the water for the field?
Perhaps, yes. We need to figure that out, because there's not only an additional expense above and beyond the $10,000 for the filtration system, but there'll be an additional monthly expense related to watering the field through the summer to filter that water.
So I guess where this leads me is I think this discussion requires a little bit more in-depth discussion with the rec center and the town so that we can represent the community, effectively. And I know historically there was a request to enter into a memorandum of understanding with the rec center about really to cover the services that, whatever funding we provide, what services are, what the expectations are for the monies. And the reason, we're not trying to be hard on the rec center, but the expenditure, the amount of money we're giving the rec center is significant.
Absolutely.
And so, and it's going up. And, you know, when the Kids Place thing was first requested, it was a one-time thing. Now it's a continuous thing. And that's not that we don't necessarily disagree with that, but maybe we need to reallocate monies rather than just add on. And so I'm gonna ask that, you know, before we finalize this contribution, that we really sit down and go through the nitty-gritty, because I'm also hearing from community members that they can't afford to take their kids swimming because it's $10 for a toddler. And I kind of feel like that is pretty expensive. If you're taking 4 people, it's $40 to go for, you know, an open swim. That sounds kind of excessive, and maybe there should be,
Not if you're a member, so.
well, maybe there should be a reduced rate for community members or something. I don't know. And so I don't know, I'm not, but, and then also, I think from my perspective, and I'm not speaking for the board, this is me, the Kids Place is my priority. And I really don't, I couldn't really tell from this information kind of how much of the town money is going into Kids Place and,
$20,000.
okay, and it might be our wish to reallocate some of the total amount of funds towards Kids Place, because personally, that's a priority. You know, I'm speaking for myself. I don't know how the rest of the board feels, but I think that's worth a further conversation before we, personally, before we approve. So I cannot, with this amount of information, and know for, you know, I feel like I need more detail before I can support this.
One point I'd also make out, it's a minor one, but one example would be snow plowing. When the rec center first opened up, I believe the town plowed the lot and sanded the lot. And now, as an example, as time goes on, situations change, the rec center pays for its snow plowing. And right now, we don't have sanding, and we really should have sanding. But there's examples, it goes both ways. There's examples of how the rec center has taken on additional expenses over time also. And then the same things we're realizing as far as, you know, when you're not filtering the water going out to the field, it's not really a big issue. But all of a sudden, then when you have to have expensive filtration systems, these things kind of come to light, where all of a sudden, wait a minute, is it the rec center's responsibility to pay for the water or the filtration of the water that goes out into the town field that the rec center has no responsibility to maintain? So some of these things have kind of crisscrossed, you know, over time, and we're just going to have to work out these different things over time.
I guess it's a little disturbing to me, though, that you went to the school to sort of have that discussion without including the town, who you were then
I haven't been
asking.
to the school, but I did call Vika before I made that, and I was told that I should start with the school. So that was a discussion between myself and
But
Vika.
if I understand correctly, your motivation is financial.
It is my motivation is who is supposed to be responsible to care for the field. Currently, it's the school. And so we are kind of in the middle of that situation. We're not responsible, the rec center is not responsible for the maintenance of the field. That is a fact.
When the project was approved, there was a study done to evaluate the irrigation system, which utilized, and you know, I worked on the study, so I'm familiar with that. And that the rec center well was identified as the water supply for the irrigation system. So that was approved by the planning board. So you can't just change it. And I guess what the other thing is just, I don't want to harp on this too much, but there is funding available for the water filtration system through the state that will be fully compensated for the cost of the system. So I think there are opportunities for funding on a number of fronts, including, you know, some state programs that we should be taking advantage of to help reduce the overall cost of operations. So that's my personal perspective.
We have people that will look into that. We have 2 new board members that are specifically looking at the grants that are available to the rec center. So we have a committee specifically for that. So
I'm gonna allow a couple more quick questions of Mr. Steve. Go ahead.
Just a real quick point, I don't think you were here then, but when the snow plowing had to stop for legal reasons, money was added to the rec center budget to compensate for that.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you so much.
Any other select board member?
First of all, thank you for all the information that we requested. It was, there's a lot to take in, a lot to try to figure out.
It's pretty involved.
What makes me a little bit more accepting of this is you stated that you have a big board now or a bigger board, and it sounds like they're willing to dig in and get things done, which around here, that's all part of it. And that's how things get done. So just in hearing all the numbers and looking at all the numbers, and like Carol said, there's more, information that she wants to gather. But if I look at the overall picture and what we're trying to do town-wise and keep things, within reason and for the majority and the best interest of all the town, I start looking at ways with these contributions of a lot of them plan for the town to give them the same amount every year. And unfortunately, the rec center has year after year been increasing the ask.
This is the second year we've asked for more.
Well, with Kids Place and, so
Okay, yeah.
it's not a new thing. And I think it's got to be stopped because I think that, the town's not going to be able to keep going the way it's going with all the requests. I think if that's an entity that needs to get things done, then with that big board, hopefully you can, raise more money, do more programs, whatever. But like Carol said, grants, and, we're all hoping for these big magical grants to come down the pike, but we got to have some good reasons and some good write-ups on to get those done.
Absolutely.
But I would like to see this contribution list get more streamlined and have like a set amount for each organization and do what we can. And I think it would come out much more fair in the overall picture. But that's where I see as this going.
Is there acceptable increases like cost of living increases or increases to an organization or department, if you will, that would be acceptable to the town? Because it's really important that the town, obviously from the rec center's perspective, it's really important that the town contributes to the rec center, but it's important for the town to also understand the positions or where the rec center is in any given year. But is there, to say that we're just going to, whatever that dollar amount was, that we're just going to be happy with not increasing that number year after year after year? Life doesn't work that way where our expenses go up and things like that. So would it be better to have a smaller increase from year to year versus wait 5 years and then all of a sudden, the department or in our case, the rec center come back and say, oh, we need this much now. I would think that smaller increases from year to year would be better than, not any increases for 5 years, and then we'll see how.
I just think that the organizations have depended on getting more money each year. And I don't think that's necessarily the way it should work. That's just my opinion. I don't know about the rest of the board.
I think we might be drifting off a little bit into the philosophical side of things, if I may. I don't want to minimize the conversation, because it's a good one. Bo, did you have anything to say?
I'm kind of like what Jen's saying, but basically, a lot of your budgets, depending on grants, depending on if you get a certain grant, depends on how much money you get. So I've always felt uncomfortable with that, if you don't get that. So the increase, especially $10,000 increase, makes me feel that you're expecting a shortfall in the grants, and you're wanting the town to pick up the shortfall in the grants. that's pretty much.
Anything else?
No,
I mean, area.
nope. That's it. Thank
You
you.
have anything, Ralph? You all set? Go ahead.
Real quick, my answer to Steve would be neither. Yes, prices go up, costs go up. I would like for the town to be the provider of last resort as opposed to an assumed provider in all cases, especially for these Department 4600 contributions.
Okay,
So from my own perspective, Steve, I do appreciate the extra financial breakdown. I think it was very well presented. I agree with Bob. I think moving forward from any and all entities on the island that are requesting funding from the town, probably more actuals than budgets would be something that we should ask for. I think I said this at the meeting on Saturday. I was a little disappointed that some of the requested extra money wasn't going to be designated directly to Kids Place. That's just my perspective. I think I talked with you about this separately one time in your office. Go ahead.
from the fundraising side, I can answer that question, the same thing. Part of that issue is it's easier to raise money for Kids Place than it is for the rec center. We have some people that are, especially now in the past 2 years, we have some really passionate people with Kids Place. So some of our largest private fundraising has been for Kids Place, and we're finding that it's a little bit more complicated to raise that same equal type of money for the operation of the larger aspect of the rec center, which is the larger budget for Kids Place. So that would be basically my response back to you, that
Yeah.
if you start seeing our numbers skewed of us asking for more for the rec center, it's because we are actually raising more for Kids Place. So,
Yeah, no, I just wanted to be honest with you and everyone about.
but it doesn't mean that we care less about Kids Place.
Yeah.
We're moving forward with expanding Kids Place. There's no question about it.
And, so my position is not gonna change, tonight. I'm not gonna be able to back the extra $10,000 increase. I'm not sure if the other board members want to speak to that tonight or whether you want to wait.
I can't back the extra $10,000. I agree with Mark.
I'm not trying to put you on the spot. You're not comfortable saying it tonight, that's fine.
I'm not ready to make a decision.
Okay. I think you voted in favor, but that doesn't mean you can always change your mind one way or the other.
Well, I'm in favor of the 69.5, but next year, if there's no MOU in place, then it goes back down to 50, 59.
Who generates that document that you need?
That it would be between your board and a couple in our board.
Understand?
And I really don't want to make any contribution till we have a little more clarity on what it's for and given the amount of money. And put yourselves in our position. We're giving taxpayer dollars, but we have no control over what happens to them. I think we need to have more specificity and clarity about what the money is being used for, especially given the overall amount of donations that you're receiving and your objectives, which are laudable but quite significant. So I think we need to have more specifics for the town.
And if we need bigger conversations, this is my opinion, if we need bigger conversations between this elected board and nonprofit entities on the island and the community who wants to participate in those discussions about relationships, agreements, memorandum of understanding, whether their employees should be looked at being eligible for some of our benefit programs. I think those are bigger conversations. They're not going to make it through in time for this budget session without being insensitive.
Correct.
I guess that was my right to your point right there, Mark. I just want to keep that dialogue going. I know that I totally understand the position that you guys have, and I would not want to be sitting where you guys are sitting and to make those decisions for our town, and I appreciate that. But I just want to make sure that the rec center provides our town with the information it needs. And in hopes for both, because we do provide, you mentioned about the pool, we do provide no cost services to, to the town, and we want to continue doing those things. So there's definite things that the rec does for the town at no specific charge to people.
Yeah.
When it comes to memberships or children, any child can come to my office, any parent or what have you, and if they can't afford something, then we will, the rec center will waive those fees for the families.
Yeah.
So those are open to the community. So we want to, again, we want to be a partner to the community, and that's all. So we want to make sure that we use the money that the town gives, like what you're saying. What's it being used for, and is it proper? We want to make sure that we're accountable for the use of those funds, and we appreciate them.
Yeah, we have a memorandum of understanding with the Quebec Transportation Company, it's pretty specific about what we support.
There's no reason why we can't. But again, this isn't necessarily the right form, but in the future or in the process, I want to make sure that we're open and maybe we work ahead of time on some of these things, so that way, we both feel that.
And very quickly, without wasting more time, with respect to plowing and sanding, yes, we were told specifically by one of our last town administrator to stop that activity based on information received from insurance and attorneys and so on and so forth. So I've asked Bo to consider putting that on for a discussion at some point to see, is that over? Are we not able to enter into an agreement with any private facility or private property for any maintenance? And if that's the case, that's the case. But if it isn't the case, then, and we can enter into an agreement and get okay from,
Let's make the rec
the
center.
law, the insurance company, and our legal people, then I want to look at it and consider entering into an agreement if it's possible. I don't know that it will be.
Let's make the rec center parking lot a public parking lot.
Yeah. Anybody else? Thank you very much for your time.
I really appreciate you moving it up, and thank you for your time, not just for the rec center, but
Yeah.
for everything that you've done.
I'd like to ask Ralph, are you here for a specific subject? I just want to know if you're waiting for
Do
something.
you have any questions about the plan?
Operational, Ralph?
Whatever.
Okay.
Is that why you're here? Yeah.
Thank you.
I thought you were observing.
Thank you.
Thanks, Steve.
Wait, let me change my hat.
Page 8.
Do you just want to run through the first few, because I don't think we have anything from page 3 to page 8 to talk about anyway. But I don't know if the rest of the board has.
Department 2200.
Let's go ahead and hit page 8 since Ralph's here. Go back.
Could I ask really quickly? Page 3 is assessor, page 4 is elections, page 5 is planning, page 6 is legal, and page 7 is law enforcement. You gonna have questions on maybe legal and law enforcement?
Not me.
Well, usually, no,
No.
Over there.
okay. Let's go to page 8, Department 2200, fire and rescue. I don't believe that we changed that last meeting, please.
I didn't have any change.
No, no.
I think the only thing,
And then it's the radios, that's the other.
Go ahead.
Right.
didn't we change line item 3,000, or is that the meeting prior?
The meeting prior.
It was 4 to 3.
That was the
Prior.
previous check.
That was previous.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Any specific questions on any of these line items for Chief Monroe?
I think
From anyone?
the radio issue is capital, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Capital?
Now, I think we hit all the questions we had in the first meeting.
Any questions for, this is jumping ahead, any questions for Chief Monroe on the proposal for the radios or the total line item which is now budgeted, proposed at $80,000 total. Any questions about radio? I think it's radios and fire truck road, right?
Yep, fire department reserve is currently in there at 80, and there's 75 in the child.
Any specific questions or comments from anyone from, from,
I can give you a quick update on the radio.
Go ahead.
Not completely done. There's another curve thrown in there too. So I talked to some of the departments out there, Yarmouth, Cumberland, Powell, and I talked to a supervisor at dispatch about using another vendor other than RCM.
Mhm.
And it came very quickly, very obvious that that would be a really bad idea.
Okay.
That Long Island's not interested in changing, and they take care of all the radios at dispatch. And there are 2 or 3 towns that use a different vendor than RCM, and pretty clear that that just doesn't work for us. And it would be works for us, especially when we're on an island, and we have a vendor that comes to the island that doesn't seem to have any problems with it. So I didn't even go down that road.
You check.
I checked, you know, it didn't make any sense. If we saved a little money, I would lose it on the other end and all kinds of issues.
Yeah, I remember RCM from when we started the town and being on the department, so I'm not surprised with that answer.
The other thing is, Cumberland has a repeater in our station now, and an antenna on the tower. So I talked to Chief Small, he called me last week, I think, and they're potentially looking at adding equipment, and he wasn't really sure, it was very early stages. They may be interested in, long discussion, but may be interested in putting a small building, like an 8x8 building or something, out by the tower somewhere, if it works. And we could move all our radio equipment into it and put a service in there and run the line from the generator. So we get all of our radio equipment out of the building, and Cumberland could pay for that. So it might actually work out in our favor.
Why would they be doing that on Quebec?
Yeah.
Because, well, we have, excuse me, we have one of their repeaters
Yeah,
in the station, so that on the west end, of them down on the four side and everything, that they
oh, I
get
see.
coverage. So they may need more equipment with, and we don't have room for it in our little slop sink room closet that we have now.
Yeah,
So they may be interested in a small building out there, and we could move our equipment with theirs and have it all in a building away from what we have now, which I think would be a lot better. And I think it would work better in the future when looking at different stations. So there's still more moving pieces to it, but
But no implications for our capital budget. Sounds good.
yeah, nothing that I'm aware of. Every time I think we got it all figured out, something else comes up, but no, so far, so good.
any more questions or comments for, yeah, go ahead.
Not financial, but we promised to give the job descriptions to the board. I just want to make sure that there wasn't any questions on the job descriptions at this time.
They haven't gotten them yet, and we haven't had a meeting,
I'm sorry,
passed them on.
I'm ahead of myself. So that's just an intriguing thing for you, late night reading.
Go ahead.
So has the fire department thought about accessing this assistance to firefighter grants that FEMA does? Because I noticed that a lot of main communities have used those for radio purchases. And I talked with a couple and they said the grant application is not particularly difficult. So I'm just wondering if you would consider applying for those.
I would consider any grant, absolutely. We haven't moved forward with any of it yet, but been too busy dealing with radio outages, and trying to figure out what direction exactly we're moving in, but yeah, we haven't worked on it yet.
So I don't know what there's a staffing grant application that's still open that you could potentially use for, summer staffing. And then there's this assistant to firefighter grants, which is more for equipment, and, we could apply when the grant system opens, even if we appropriate the money, because we could, depending on the time, we could potentially still use it. And I think, Mika, you offered to work with Steve on looking into that, right?
With the grants.
Yeah, because I think we're leaving money on the table.
Do we know when it opens?
On that one, I don't know. But on the, you might want to look at the staffing grant, because I don't know what the cost is but I mean, there's a limitation for, it's gonna be small towns under 10,000, so we fit that criteria. And I think it was the fall for the equipment grants, but I noticed that, really tiny towns are applying for them and getting them.
Yeah. I can tell you, I was just compiling a list, so I can, I'm working on how much we've received in donations and grants and what we bought with that. And we're over $200,000 we've applied for and got through donations and grants. So I'm not against grants, obviously. We have a lot of our equipment, most of our big money equipment in the station, in the building, in the trucks, all come from donations and grants.
Yeah. And I think we all recognize that one of our problems with this small town is the amount of time and staff and expertise available to write and apply for grants. So we probably should continue to focus a little bit more on that as a town. Any more questions specifically or anything for the fire department? Yes.
Just that, there were a couple different choices on the radio, and Long Island still wants the top of the line.
Yeah.
Okay.
I haven't talked, the only thing I haven't talked to Sam about yet is the battery backup, which we'll ask about. And I will talk to them. They're supposed to be coming over hopefully this week to take care of one of the problems we had this past weekend.
So 80 is enough money just for the radios.
Who's the chief over there now?
Coming,
Lon.
Will Kearney.
Oh, yeah. All set, everyone? Thank you very much, Rob.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thanks, both of you.
Want to go to page 9 real quick? Any questions on code enforcement from anyone? Comment?
I think I'm in the minority, but I think that budget needs to be increased, but that's.
And I forget what your number was.
I didn't have a number specifically, I just think we're gonna need more time.
Okay. I thought you had a number last time, no?
No, because, well, I think this is equivalent to 8 to 10 hours a week, is that right?
Correct.
So I would double it. please.
Should have 20 hours a week at, what, $30 an hour or something? I don't know.
Oh, I'd have to figure out what the hourly rate is. This is based on a set weekly.
You're talking, well, I mean,
540 per week.
540 per week, so
Oh, right.
I would just double the time, use all the same numbers, but that's me, and I don't think anybody else had an appetite for
Are you
that.
making that proposal right now?
Yes,
What would that number be? Give me a
well,
rough
if we
idea.
were gonna double what we have, it would be,
Are you doubling 28,000?
Yeah,
double
that's what
that?
you would be
Yeah.
doing.
Okay. Go
what
ahead.
did you say, Vika?
I said you would essentially be doubling the number.
Right, 56, 160.
Go ahead, Bob.
I need more information on those numbers. 28,000 for 8 to 12 hours does not make sense to me. We did the math in the last meeting, it was a pretty exorbitant number.
Yeah.
I do agree we need to increase the number dramatically. I would like to take it a little bit different direction and suggest that we talk to Long about this as one of a couple of positions that we might be able to share, a full-time position. And to that end, I would like to raise the number from 28 to 40.
Okay.
Be half or maybe slightly more than half, because we're slightly bigger than Long, of a full-time position.
All right. Jen, do you have an opinion on this department?
I think we need to increase the hours that they're here for. how we go about that. Don't have my teeth sunk
So
into
you're
it.
not really agreeing with either Carol or Bob's, I'm just trying to simplify the
No, I
process.
get it.
Is that accurate, Jen?
I'm agreeing with both of them. How's that?
Okay, do you have a favorite?
Hope.
What?
No.
Okay,
I'm gonna change mine to Carol's number.
Well, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
So if you could give it to us again, what is it, you said that it's 10 hours a week, and I thought you said $540 a week?
yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I don't have
So
the
it's not
number
$30
exactly
an hour.
in front of me because it was based on, so when the current code enforcement officer, according to his contract, one-page thing that when his position was, it was kind of a negotiated thing, trying to find one, when we had to get a new one, and he was hired at 8 to 10 hours a week. And the pay grade was, certain months, one number, and then certain months, another number. And then last season, it went to, I believe it was 540 or 580, something like that per week. And it was just consistent, the same number versus doing like January and February and March, having it be a lower pay, scale of a
So-
salary versus higher.
So he's getting on average $54 an hour for 10 hours every week right now. Is that
If you
right?
take 2 weeks out for vacation, it's $56 an hour.
Okay,
So
so that-
28,080 divided by 50 weeks equals $561.60 a week. Divided by 10 hours equals $56 an hour. If it's 12 hours, it's a different number.
so Bob, I'm gonna ask you really quick if you don't mind. First of all, I think the proposed wage number is $56,160.
I thought it was 40.
well, Bob said 40, I said double it. I'm talking about doubling the hours, and that's.
Am I misspeaking?
So I'd like to rephrase maybe for both of us. Carol can then tell me I'm crazy, but my proposal includes us funding half or slightly more than half of a full-time position so that our hours per week would double. And with a full-time position, we would need benefits as well. That needs to be included. I don't think benefits are in this number, are they, Vika?
No, he doesn't get any benefits, any time off, any payday.
Let me ask it differently. If this was a full-time position, wouldn't the benefits show up elsewhere in the budget, not in Department 2400?
Correct.
Okay, so what I'm saying is I would put 40,000 in there for slightly more than half of a full-time position, or we increase the hours. I think we need to look at the wage rate. I don't know. I know a wage rate is going to be higher for someone who's part-time as a consultant than it is for somebody who's full-time. And I would like to explore it. So I don't think we need to double it to 56 in order to get to 20 hours. I do think if we take it up to 40 and we work with long, or we increase the number of hours for a part-time person, we might be going in the right direction.
Okay, so before I get to Bo, I think Carol, are you still at 56?
I'll withdraw my suggestion, let's go to 40. I think, it's hard to know because I don't know what the going rate is, so let's leave it at 40 and,
Okay. And are you with that proposal? And Jen, you don't?
Yep.
You are?
That works.
And it doesn't matter, right? Tonight. Where are you at?
I don't have a problem planning in the future, but there's no plan. So,
Yeah.
we don't have a plan. The talks haven't even started with long. So it's just concerning, you were talking about a while ago about using taxpayer money. So, so we use it, we don't, it goes into
Yeah.
the piggy bank, it's fine.
So that's where I am, without minimizing your proposal to increase this. I understand where you might be coming from, I think. I don't think we have a plan of how to increase the availability and activity of at least with the position working presently. I don't, I know from discussions with the person in the position presently, maybe this is a tiny bit inappropriate. The availability may not be there. I'm not saying we can't make a different plan. I'm just not comfortable myself. You've got 3 for tonight, so we're gonna, unless one of you changes, we're gonna change it for tonight. I'm just telling you why I'm not gonna be going along with it, is I don't think we're on solid enough footing to change it. Go ahead, Jen.
I just think that, based on everything that's been happening and the increase in building and everything, that the town needs to seriously look at increasing this position, the amount of time in it. And the only way to do that is to, number one, ask our current CEO if he is on board with doing that. And it wouldn't be until this is voted in, obviously, at town meeting, but it's a start. And that's the plan. It's not, figuring out with Long Island right now that this plan, the one that I'm voting for, is to increase that so that we have the flexibility to have a position that has 20 hours a week. That's where I stand.
Makes sense. So to summarize, Vicky, did you have a comment or a question?
Kind of just more of a clarification. So my biggest concern is that we're making this big drastic change in the 3rd budget, and I need to know if I need to now invest time in adjusting other department areas according to potentially got in a position that's going to fall under the category of qualified for benefits and things like that, because then I need to, under, where the benefits part is, include the potential for health insurance, for FICA, for Medicare. I would have to adjust those numbers properly if that's what you have in mind in terms of a position with benefits and things like that. And that's where I'm a little unclear about where does that stand.
That's a good point. Go ahead.
So what's the threshold where you offer benefits?
So they have to be at 23 hours a week.
And I would suggest we keep it 20 or less and not have to deal with benefits. That's what I would suggest.
So my answer to Vicky would be no, please don't do anything with all those other categories.
Okay.
Let's go with this budget number.
Okay.
If we then need to move things around after a plan evolves, we can always do that even after the budget. If we need to call a special town meeting to shift a little bit of money, we can do that, but I think the number is the right number.
So just to be clear on Department 2400 code enforcement, 1010 wages is going from $28,080 to $40,000 exactly. Did I right? Any other questions or comments on this one? Thank you. Page 10, any changes tonight for Harbor Master Shellfish? Tomorrow night, we're going to be talking about job description, I think is what's advertised. I'm not sure how that may or may not relate to numbers, but does anybody have anything to say about the numbers? So far, we've lowered 1010 down to $6,000. I think that's the major change. Any no questions? Okay.
Just,
Sure.
so tomorrow, basically, it's just a workshop to hear the recommendation from coastal waters and shellfish if they come and stuff. Basically, just so we can powwow and ask what their recommendations are.
Yeah, for the position and the job description.
Correct.
Oh,
It's not really good to talk about, well, you think, in your opinion, will there be any recommendation of compensation as it relates to the position or job description?
Justin asked what the current recommendation is to have an idea of what, what they're working with, and it has not been an easy process to try to get any of these board members to respond. Justin is the only one that I know for certain that's coming, so I mean, Justin and I have gone back and forth in emails trying to figure out a date, trying to figure out who's coming or who isn't coming. So I would be very surprised if we received I mean, you never know, they might all come, but when I emailed both of the boards, not a single person responded to me other than Justin. And
So
he
I
said
didn't
he
know exactly what kind of workshop this is gonna be tomorrow, as far as what kind of information you're gonna get. So it's just gonna be solely a workshop. If the board thinks there's some decisions that need to be made, we'll put it on the March 15th meeting as an agenda item. That way we can do a proper motion and or adjust the budget.
And I know that we all know this, and it probably doesn't need to be said, but we should keep in mind when we're talking about the position and the job description to stay out of performance or not. Any, no questions on harbor master shellfish. Page 11 is animal control department 2600. Anything on that? Page 12 and 13 is public services. Anybody?
Just
Yes.
Just that we were asking for 4,000 building maintenance, if they had something in mind that needed to be done. Didn't know if, Vika, you had a chance to
I
check with
double
them.
checked with Chuck on, what was it, building maintenance, and then there was another one.
Road materials.
Road materials, and his response was, I wish you wouldn't take it out, but if you do, we'll make it work.
But we didn't change road materials, right?
We changed the winter.
Winter road materials
Oh,
got
okay.
changed, yes.
Salt, sand and salt.
We dropped by, yeah.
The only hesitation with the building maintenance is in their current budget, there is money in it to replace the current, not the generator, they bought that, what is it, the generator? I guess it is the generator
It's a
inside.
generator. Okay.
And they had a difficult time lining up the electrician who was supposed to do it to trying to get one who can make the time to do it. So it might creep into the process where they might not get around to being able to make that purchase or get that worked out this year, in which case, you know, they would be limited to the funds for next year. But I have encouraged Chuck to try to utilize that budget this year and try to see if they can get that before, you know, July 1st.
Does that answer your question, John?
Yes,
Anything from anyone else? Okay, thank you. Page 14 is solid waste. Questions? Observations?
I guess, Vika, you sent us that spreadsheet breakdown. But I honestly didn't quite understand what you were saying. So maybe you could try it in person. And I could-
Yeah, so and like I said in the email, probably sending that information could create more confusion than anything. After looking at the numbers and looking at the barging from one year to the next, I did email Lionel as well to get a better understanding of their cost breakdown. When COVID hit, and especially after when the fuel prices went up, they had an unexpected 5% fleet surcharge that they began charging with every barge. So from last year's budget to this year's budget, there was an increase in the cost that we expected, that we adjusted going into the new budget year, but it was not expected with a 5% surcharge, which ended up being a big account for the significant increase. We don't have that now, so they don't anticipate to have that in the next coming year. But looking at all of the numbers and averaging the spike in barges from fiscal year 22 to 23. I believe, I think in my email, I said we went from 43 barges to 54 barges from one year to the next. So the increase of how many barges we're using to remove trash has increased. And I suspect that this year will be at a higher rate. So what I would recommend is that we budget for, last year we were at 63. I think that it would be safe to budget for 70 in accordance with, you know, the potential increase that we might have, which would put us under barging for a cost of $60,550 for taking, you know, 7 barge trips and making sure that we have the funds to cover that.
Go ahead, Bob.
So for a period of time, so part of the problem here is that the spreadsheet is calendar year,
Yes,
but what you were just talking about was budget year.
yes, it's calendar year because that's the spreadsheet that we need to send to DEP. We have to do an annual transfer station report to them.
I understand that. What I'm saying is it's really difficult to make sense of any of this when we're talking 2 different languages.
And
Secondly, didn't we have a period of time where we were barging more frequently because we were sensitive to the fact that we had to shut the transfer station down a couple times? Wasn't that?
the last 2 years in July and creeping into August.
So we were shipping out more frequently. Do we know if those containers were full when they were rolled?
They were almost always full, yes. If not full and waited to be barged out.
So what I tried to do with the spreadsheet was look at the average annual expenditure. And I'm not able to make sense. So I'm trying to get beyond raw data, which was what was in the spreadsheet. And I'm not able to convert it to fiscal year, but I was at least trying to get it to year by year. If you look at that yellow portion that I added to the spreadsheet, since 2014, the numbers went down dramatically up until 2019. So in 2014, it was 70, 2015, it was 74. This is total annual dollars for that entire spreadsheet. So it went down to 74. I'm sorry, it went up to 74 from 70, then it went down to 66, then it went down to 56, 59, 61, 58. And then in 58 was calendar year 2020. COVID hit in February of 2020. So I think what happened was we had a lot less activity in that first year of COVID, or in the first half of the first year of COVID, because there was nobody here, nobody was doing anything. And then people started moving out here, and we all started ordering stuff online, and packaging went up and loads went up and all that. But then it stayed, so 2021 went up to 81, and then stayed at 81 for 2022. So if the total expenditure on those calendar years stayed the same, how are we behind budget this year? Has there been, so the fiscal year is July 1, right?
Yeah.
Correct.
And if calendar year, if the current fiscal year that we're in, we're having a budget problem with hauling and barging.
We're having a budget problem with barging. not
With barging.
hauling. Correct.
And we're only halfway into that year, but in the first half of the year, we were part of a calendar year that was the same as less than the year before, slightly less than the year before. Did we lower the budget amount for the current fiscal year from the prior year?
No. Last year's budget for barging was 42.9.
Yeah, I see that. And, in 2021, we raised it. I'm sorry, 2020,
2021, it was the actual in 2022,
Right.
so 2021 and 2022, and then it was budgeted at 42.9 for 23. We're at 42.9 year to date. And so that's why I'm recommending, that we increase the barging closer to $60,000, because last year, the year to date did not include the raise of the LPA truck use of the $25 difference and the $90 difference of the barging trip. So last year's, 42, or the 2022 actual, $42,517 did not have the LPA increase of $50 for truck use, or I'm sorry, $25, or the $90 of the cost of the trip.
So how many trips did we have in fiscal year 2022?
It's all in this email that,
Probably around 50.
fiscal year, there were 54 trips.
So it's about $5,000. And
They cost $600 per trip.
I'm talking about the increase, those $50 increase per trip. So $90 increase per trip. So 90 times 50 is, and you said it was 54, so I rounded it up to $5,000.
Yeah.
So 25 per truck, 2 trucks per trip, 3 trucks per trip.
And another is $25 for the LPA truck. So in this email, I said the difference in cost between fiscal year 21 and 22 on barging of 54 trips was $6,200.
Okay,
That did not include the 5% fuel surcharge that was being charged during the highest part of the fuel increase. That was something that
how much was that?
it's 5%. So it
How many
varied.
dollars?
It varied per every trip based on what the gas was. They charge us 5%. So you look at the bills, it was a different number every time.
Right. And I'm asking what that number totaled up to for, so what I'm trying to get at is the information that you gave us doesn't help us understand what's really going on. That we know that there are these general things happening, the increase per trip, the increase per truck, and the increase for fuel. But if we don't have dollars associated with, if I don't have dollars associated with that, I can't make it add up. And I can't make barging and hauling for year to date. That was budget. So budget for 2023 for barging was 43 and hauling was 85. So roughly twice as much for hauling in the budget. But in the year to date, they're about the same or close to it. I can't make that make sense. Or that,
If you look at what was actual in 2022 was $81,621. It's the hauling and barging isn't going to be consistently even number.
so barging went up.
It's what kind of products we're sending off on the barge that varies in what we get charged for cost.
Maybe we need to look at the invoices specifically.
That's where I'm going.
that's-
I'd like to have us look at the actual invoices, either copies of them or listed in a spreadsheet.
Yeah, the challenging part about this is I haven't had to, last year I didn't have to provide this information, and the way that I was taught to do the budget there wasn't an explanation to have to provide this level of detailed information. So while you're struggling to understand it, I'm struggling to create the time to be able to provide you the information that you need to understand what, where the numbers are coming from.
I'm gonna take Bo real quick. if you don't mind.
Okay, some of this confusion might be a little bit. I don't know if it was bookkeeping or how the information was given to us by line of plant or whatever. But I remember a few years back, there was a confusion between the barging for dirt for public services and the dump. So the barging numbers weren't matching up. And I think if I remember correctly, we did go over on the barging in 1 year for public service. but we didn't go over the material, so that's where the question was brought up.
Yeah.
Why are
Do we have a separate
barging so
barging
much?
line in public services now?
We do.
Yes.
Okay,
So you'll see like 2021, we barged for $22,000 actual, but the road materials and stuff like that are comparable to the other years.
okay, so
So that might be some of the issues, but some of the
might
numbers
be.
might not have been inputted right or to the correct line item.
what I'm trying to get at is, I totally understand that might be some of the issues. I'd like to know what that means. I'd like to actually be able to add page A and page B and have it equal page C in a logical fashion, so that we can all say, that's what happened. What I'm not okay with is, well, some of it was this and some of it was that, and there might have been some of this. With these kind of numbers, I think we need to be more detailed on what we know. So in 2022, the total number of halls, not counting plant. No, we had plants numbers for 2022, 2021, and 2020. We don't have plants numbers in these spreadsheets for the prior years. But in 2022, if you count all the material haulage invoices and all of the plant hauls, it's 138 invoices. So if I could get a copy of 138 invoices,
Bob, for us right now to do that, we would have to unstaple each pay stub to each invoice and scan them. I mean, think about the time that it's gonna require for us to scan all that information and send it to you, because each individual invoice is stapled to a pay stub. I'm gonna have to have somebody in the office unclip every single one and scan that into you. If you wanna come in and look through those invoices, by any means, at any point, but that little detail of you needing that information is putting additional staff that right now these are the kind of little things that are really causing a lot more work in the office, that it's making it really difficult to try to keep up.
How about if we can I just suggest something for tonight?
yes.
Let's decide whether we're going to accept her recommendation of upping the barging by $17,000. Isn't that, is that simple for tonight?
That's my question. I didn't quite understand so the number we have there now is 43,000. Are you suggesting 60,000?
Yes, because what I took is I looked at the average trips that we had in the last couple of years and then the increase. And then I connected with Lionel Planned to get information from them about whether they're anticipated any increases and whether fuel charge is going to be moving forward. And he said at this point, they're not looking for that, or they're not expecting that. So I anticipated potentially more barging this year with just a constant ongoing, especially since there is nothing in the ordinance that says that, if it's over a certain X amount of dollars, then they have to have their own barge. We have 4 new buildings that are gonna be going up. There's constant renovation. So increasing the number based on 70 barges.
So so just so I can get the number, so that's 60,000, that's 70 barge trips at how much per trip? About
$690 per trip, and then $175 per truck use.
And then you're not expecting the hauling fee, which has been 70, 80, 85 budgeted for this year. You don't expect a change in that, even though you expect more waste?
I think that's where it's a struggle, because if you look at the average and you look at the numbers, it's increased, but price-wise, it hasn't increased in a way where it's impacting our budget significantly, so.
So the volume has increased, but the cost has not? Is that what you're saying?
For the trash?
Yeah.
Correct. According to the information that we have, it hasn't been to the level where we've seen a noticeable change. There's been increases to things, like a TV or a fridge or things like that, but those are the changes that last year we increased in terms of the revenue we're collecting to offset those costs.
I don't know how it's working today. When we started the town, the municipal solid waste charge is what you're referring to, I believe, the garbage, the municipal.
Right,
solid
but I
waste
mean,
charge.
based on this, there's, you know, there's, I guess, metal, that's municipal solid waste, single stream is the recycling, and then metal halls, and then C and D halls, that's construction debris.
Construction.
Yeah, and all those things, we did the increase for the fees that we collect last July 1st in accordance with what we get charged is what we're trying to charge, you know, the people that are dumping it, so then we're not losing money as a municipality.
Let's decide whether we're in favor of her recommended increase for garbage. Let's focus on that.
What I hear us saying is that the amount of trash is going up, but the cost of the trash haulage is not going up, which means that per ton, they're dropping their price. That's the only logical conclusion.
Being eco-man.
Whoever we're paying, if we're saying the number of loads is going up, and that's why we need more barges, but we're saying that the haulage fee does not go up because we're not spending more on haulage. If we need more barges, it has to be because there's more trash. If they're taking more trash without charging us more, then they have to have dropped their price.
The majority of the increase has come from the construction barging needed to go up.
And I'll make my comment based on some of the.
And that's what we charge.
I have other ways of looking at that facility, but.
So, but if you look at MSW hauls, from 2020 to 2021 to 2022, it went from 15 to 21 to 27. It doubled. If you look at construction waste, for those same 3 years, it went from 21 down to 17 up to 27. It only went up by 6 tons.
Yeah.
So it's not all in construction. According to these numbers, it's not there. It's more MS&W. MS&W doubled the number of hauls. Construction went from 21 down to 17 up to 27.
So you're saying you're not in favor of her recommended increase on garbage?
I'm saying I can't come up with a number until I know more. I need analysis, not just numbers.
Sorry to rush you. Jen, what's your opinion? Do you have one on her number recommendation of adding to barging?
I think it should be 60,000. I'll go with that.
I'm sorry, what?
I agree with the 60,000.
Okay, Carol?
I'm fine putting 60 in, but I do think we need to understand the relationship between, you know, the haulage and the barging.
Yeah.
And so, for now, because I'm worried that we might have to increase the haulage too.
Oh, where are you at?
I'm fine with 60.
Yeah, I'm not fine with changing that. I think that we're not going to, if you look at the way the budget's going overall, I think we're in a pretty good position with solid waste overall budget, not barging. The overall budget so far is in a good place. I think there's a bigger picture that we need to look at, and I'm not gonna get into it, this is 20 minutes of aid. But I think the bigger picture is, I think we're being way too kind to contractors. I don't care if you work from off island, on island. I think we're being way too accommodating up there to people doing business that should be disposing of their own waste. I'm sorry to say that I think we should treat businesses a little bit more unfriendly and have a few more fees for cardboard and so on and so forth. I also believe that a more holistic look at the way we run that facility is warranted. And I know for a fact, talking with a couple of Yarmouth residents, the town of Yarmouth has a fee that people pay per year instead of paying per bag, a small fee to use the facility. Something like that may warrant some
They just started a
discussion.
program where they have to buy their bags now, so it's a per bag cost.
I'm just saying, we may have to take a more holistic look at this facility. The things that have changed with the barging are the fuel charge, which may or may not stay, the trucking charge, which likely will stay, and the fact that Triano Waste is our carrier right now, and I hardly ever see Triano coming to do our waste. So I don't know what the relationship is between the town of Sheboygan and Triano. That definitely needs some,
That's where we paid this 175 truck cost because Lionel
yeah.
uses their truck to.
I'm not saying anything,
Yeah.
anybody doing anything wrong or not doing anything right. I'm just saying we need to understand it. Go ahead.
And I can be persuaded either way. I think we do need to analyze the information so that we can, if we're gonna implement a charge program, we have sort of the basis to do that.
Yeah.
I think, I don't know how the system works and how it's determined, you know, when you have a full container, can you get a barge the next day? Like, I don't know how that system works, but I do think that it's a growing cost that we should try to, and I don't know, there's revenues for the solid waste, which I don't know how those offset these costs. In other words, did we cover the additional, will we cover the additional costs for 2023 with our charges?
With the revenue, I'll have to take a look at it for the next meeting, but with the revenue, our revenue from last year to this year should be double.
And I don't have any idea what that is.
The revenues are very good, and they're also good on the code enforcement. That's why I didn't fight you to.
So I just mean, you know, if we bump up, that's kind of the evaluation I would do, is are we covering the cost, or is the cost going up and we're only following it behind it? So I think it needs more discussion, but, you
What
know,
about
I think
for
this is
tonight?
one of the reasons.
So you-
I'll leave it, I'm fine leaving it the way it is.
So for,
43 and 85.
so for tonight, 50, 20, I'm sorry, are we changing it?
I'll go back to
I'm
43.
not clear.
43,
And, but there's still 3 votes for 60, I believe.
right.
I was
Oh, I'm sorry, you were not.
not a vote for 60.
So for tonight, we're gonna leave it alone.
Okay, yeah.
You
Sorry,
all set, Vika?
sorry.
Yes.
Nothing on miscellaneous mainland, I'm assuming?
Nope.
Contributions is. Nothing on general assistance, page 17.
Right,
Nothing on health services, page 18.
Correct,
Nothing on cemetery, 19.
correct.
right.
Page 20, nothing on debt service, 6,900, can't change it anywhere.
No, and I did, because I think at some point, just make sure that so our debt service will, you know, is projected to go up from, what is it? Total debt service from last year was 355, for this fiscal year, it's 355, 786, and for next year, based on the addition of this,
Broadband.
well, actually, it's the addition, yeah, of the 2 bonds from this year, the dredging and the broadband, it comes up to 438, 586, right,
Yeah,
and the
yeah.
other broadband,
Yeah, so it'd be up 24% from last year to this.
right, so that's a big increase.
Yep,
Mark,
yes.
I just thought, I mean, everybody knows it, but to have it written down in black and white, just how much it is increasing to borrow money, how much the interest is, and how scary that is for all the projects that we have, you know, want to look at in the future. And I think we, as a town, we need to be really mindful of that and figure out how we're gonna pay for that, but it's not always just a bond. So, there you go.
I agree, and I'm not saying we will get grants for stone walk or anything else, but I am thinking that it may behoove us to consider talking to some professional people that do it, like CTC had. Go ahead, Bob.
So the total bonding number of 438, 588, that is our cost of servicing the bonds. That's our interest in principal, if you will, expenditure for the year.
Right,
Okay, just want to make sure I understood that.
and it goes to 473 and stays up there until
Yeah.
fiscal year 29.
Yep.
Any more questions on that page?
No, and thanks for the chart, that helps.
Next, page 21, Department 7,500 benefits and insurance. Any questions or comments?
Yeah, I just have, I know everybody wants to get out of here, but I do have a question, Vika, on the form you sent us, just so I understand. I think I printed it out. This is on the health benefits. What is, I get the insurance, what is the general dynamics thing? Can't find it in front of me there, but it is a $5,000 or $2,500 contribution of 20, so it's a total of 25,000 every year to this general dynamics. What is that?
Yeah, so in the actual budget, we're not budgeted for the full 25,000. Under benefits, the budget is, includes the estimated health insurance. I averaged the claims from the previous year, and that's what's in the actual budget, but the 25,000 is the maximum that could be spent. And Group Dynamics is a program that the town has as a result of having a really high deductible for the health insurance. So the health insurance that the plan that the town has through MMA is their lowest plan out of like the 5 or 6 plans that are offered. And so what this does is to offset the cost of the high deductible. It covers up to, you know, 5,000 per family or 2,500 individual.
So what is the deductible for the plan?
Oh God, I'd have to look at the,
Well, I mean ballpark, is it 10,000, is it 5,000?
I think it's in the $5,000 range, I think.
So I'm not clear, so this group dynamic reimbursements, is this monies that the employee takes out of their check and puts into a health savings account, or is this a town fund, you know, is that contribution coming from the town?
So the town pays a monthly fee per employee, so it's 24, you know, it's $4 or $5 per person. And the way that it works is if I go to the doctors and you know, it's $300 out of pocket that I have to pay, and I haven't reached my deductible, Group Dynamic sends me a check for the $300.
So it's like a health savings account. So do we, who's contributing that money, the town or the employee?
The town.
And so, for example, the charges for last year were 6,000, but there was
Yes.
25,000 contributed. So does that accrue in the
No,
account? I'm-
it doesn't, this is, the 25,000 is the maximum potential that could be expended. If every single person who applies for it reaches their deductible and Group
Worst
Dynamic
case
covers the
scenario.
maximum. What we budget for is the average or the, you know, close to the average from the previous year too. So in the current year's budget, under the health insurance and department, you know, 7,500, 1,210, the number 103 is taking the estimated cost of health insurance, which is that $96,000 number, and adding that, I believe I added 7,000
$7,000.
for,
Okay.
yes, not the full 25.
Okay, so I get that. So so basically, we're not, it's basically paying the charges as they're incurred. It's not as though we're, you know, like our health savings accounts, if we put $5,000 in and we don't use it, it stays in the account, but that's not the situation.
Correct.
Okay, I gotcha. So basically, it's 96 as what you project as the cost plus the 7,000 for health insurance claims.
Correct.
We implemented this a few years ago from meeting with one of our representatives for our insurance carrier with a recommendation of being more friendly to our employees for possible high deductible situations. That's why we implemented.
So it's different than a health savings account, which I have though. So
It's
that's
a
why.
little different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
Any more questions on the benefits and insurance?
so so 103 is that number, yep, okay.
Can I just ask a quick question?
Sure.
So does, like how often does it get revisited? as far as, asking if a health savings account would be a better plan than this
Yeah.
group dynamic. How often do
It's a
they?
good question. We haven't done it since Marjorie helped bring it forward to us through the main municipal carrier. So I think maybe it would be worthy of a conversation of how this is working, any other programs that might be similar or more attractive or beneficial, to employees and the town. So-
Because, I mean, the only thing I think about with a situation like this is, it's like a health savings account, you have that, it rolls over every year. This, it doesn't, it just kind of disappears, and that's too bad, because that's just town.
Yeah,
dumping
well,
in.
But the difference is that with an HSA, the individual is putting the money in, so it's a cross between a medical thing and an investment, whereas in our case, the town is liable for up to 25K and just rolling the dice to say 7K is all we're gonna fund. If we wound up with 25K, we'd have to scratch it up somewhere else.
Right, I just think if the health savings account puts it on the employee, which might be beneficial.
Any more questions on benefits and insurance?
No, I understand
Thank
it
you for
now.
that explanation. We're going to skip through the school. and Go all the way to page 34, streetlights, carbon 8100. Questions, comments?
Nope, the climate group is looking into streetlights, so they'll come back to you with a report, but I would leave the number where it is.
Nothing's been shot out yet.
Nope.
Any more?
Why'd you look at me when you said that?
We go to page 35, Department 8300 contingency. This is the amount of money that the select board has the ability, if the voters approve, to expend upon discretion or request. 14,000. Any comments on this one? Okay. Page 36, taxpayer come on this half of the value of the other rounds. Any questions on this one? Can't really do much with it. It'll depend on valuation, of course. Page 37, Department 8900, any questions on county tax? And when will we know this number accuracy wise?
County tax,
Is this number good, do you think?
it is accurate,
Okay.
they, I have recently updated it, so it's based on what they had sent us.
And isn't it, aren't we incorporating like a year and a half sort of?
It's incorporating, half a year split into 5 years.
Yeah, so basically we're spreading that out over a long period.
Yeah,
So that's why it's bumped up.
yeah, so it's 1 year, it's $190,621 is for 23-24 tax year, but then we're paying for the 2023, because they switched fiscal calendar year, we're paying an additional 17,906. That, so.
What's that? Page 38 is your capital improvement department 9,000. From last meeting, the only physical change that I'm aware of, not budget wise, but physical printout, is that we did away with the line 9036, which was the
Oh,
radio.
right.
Is that accurate?
Yes, that got removed and all the funds got added into the fire department reserve.
Yeah, so they all went into that $80,000 total. I have a quick question about 9055, the public works equipment. We've got $25,000 in there proposed, and we have a balance of around 70,000. Is that going to be enough, in your opinion, if we decide to pull the trigger on one of those 3 tractors?
So the quotes are different in price. And so I would consider adding a little bit more if you're laying towards, you know, the $94,000 tractor. Just to make sure that it's covered in there.
That was my point. I think we may be thinking seriously about a machine, so go ahead, Bob.
Well, we've got 71 at Machias. We've
Right.
got 25 for that line. That equals 96. That would seem to be enough for the most expensive tractor. And the most expensive one also had the brush on it, the other two did not, right?
Seems worthwhile.
It is, just having an extra couple $1,000s in there as a cushion in case if, you know, something comes up or there's a barging cost associated. A lot of the times with these capital expenses, the barging cost will add towards it too.
Put it in the trash.
My recommendation would be go to at least 30. Go ahead.
That's what I was
Yeah,
gonna do is recommend.
5,000, but I was gonna recommend just have an extra couple thousand in there.
I was gonna recommend bring it up to 30 and that, I recommend that we look at the New Holland tractor. We already have a relationship with, CNH. Good place to start. And I'd like to get the recommendation from Public Works on their thoughts on it.
We have two at 30,000. Anybody else? Any other questions on this line item only before we exit? Just one quick question, I won't waste time. Did someone say, or you say, one of them would be able to have a sweeper mechanism?
Yeah.
Right. That was the big
That
advantage.
both,
Yeah.
New Holland has a
Includes the
sweeper that included,
Thank you.
plus the mower on it and a bucket.
Okay. I'm gonna let any and all select people identify any capital items that they think we need to discuss tonight and the amount or any amounts that we need to add or change. Thoughts for tonight? Go ahead.
Just one question, and I'm new at this, so bear with me, but there are 8 or 10 accounts at Machias that are not on Schedule 9,000, Department 9,000. At what point, and I know some of them are there for a reason, but at what point do we look at those 8 or 9 items and say, that's not gonna happen, let's pull that out and reallocate it to something, propose to town meeting, reallocating it to something else? Or at what point do we say, that's different, we need to change the label, that kind of thing?
Well, I don't know about tonight because Carol's starting to yawn, but
Just you don't know.
I think that any point during this process, it can be tonight, it can be the next time we talk about capital, you can look at any of those items on the Machias savings that are not included on the printed out page from Trio on Department 9,000 and say, why is this reserve fund here? Why is this amount of money here? What's the purpose? What's the description? What are we doing with it? What's our plan? I kind of gave you that opportunity, I think, last time. We didn't really dip into it. And that's the trouble with not having dedicated meetings to capital.
Yep.
Because you can talk about other stuff, and then when you get to capital, you're worn out. Go ahead.
So what I would suggest, because Herb had already written the previous capital plan, and he has sort of a table in there, that we take that, I try to consolidate where we're at, distribute it to everybody, because I think there might be some accounts that we may want to change the name of, which apparently would have to be a town meeting thing. So I think we should have the account number, the name, the description, and the amount. And we can then all look at the same picture and decide if there's some we want to change.
Yeah, and can I just ask one question? Maybe we want to do this or suggest it to the voters, and maybe we don't. With Stone Wharf, did we talk about making that account be called Stone Wharf and Access Road? Did we agree upon that last time?
Yes.
The reason I'm asking
Yeah.
that question
We did.
is we may decide at some point as a community to widen that Stone Wharf Road. And if we start to do that, right now, I'm not sure we could use the money out of that account with a straight face. It's pretty nip and tuck.
I thought you read the definition and we felt it was okay because
We
it
did.
said access or something.
So
Parking
last,
area or something.
last meeting, the
Oh, that
three
was it.
things, stonework, land acquisition and development, and Indian Island were the three items that you, agreed should go in front of the town vote for change.
Oh, okay, that's what it was.
Yeah,
Okay.
Indian Island shouldn't say retaining.
Yeah, Indian Island was gonna be Indian Point Public Access Planning and Implementation.
Mhm.
And then you left, me to figure out how to change the language for the other two. But that would be, these would be something, I could prepare and print out for the next budget.
All right,
So you have
why don't you do that?
those. And then the language of any of this would be in town warrant.
And then I think we should update the capital plan so that it's one document that everybody can go to instead of these three different spreadsheets with, you've been looking at the definitions, I think, from the capital plan.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
it all should be in one place. And then, maybe there's some accounts we could consolidate or something, we can look at them, I don't know. Like the harbor master vessel, that may be a non-account. So we may want to move that into something else.
And here's my next question to myself and all of us. So the next flush draft of the budget is not until April
Look,
5th.
yeah,
All right.
oh, month, yeah, I was,
So I have two questions. First of all, if that's the fourth draft of the budget, when are we going to talk about capital improvements again? That's my first question. And do we need a separate meeting in between now and April 5th for capital? That's my second question. But
I would say, yes, we need a meeting just on capital, and I would like to see the document that Carol and Vika were just talking about several days before that, so we have time to study it before we walk into the meeting.
And so, do we have to set a date tonight in everyone's opinion, or can we sort of sleep on it and think about it?
We could set a date next week, at next week's meeting.
I think we should set a date, to start thinking about that. I really think we should put a bit more focus on capital, that's my opinion. Okay?
We can put an agenda item for next week's meeting.
oh, I don't know. You think we're doing that next week's meeting?
No, just setting a
set a
date.
date.
Just talking about whether we want to have one more designated meeting or not.
Yeah, and personally, I think in a capital plan, the debt service needs to be in consideration too, because that's kind of this ongoing big cost.
The other option is to take April 5th and really just look at each other and say, we're pretty good with department, now let's go to capital. That's the other option.
I don't see any big changes to the department.
I'd still like to do capital separate.
Okay, we'll talk about it next week. Anything else on capital for tonight?
It's not a capital, but we also need another go at the,
Contribution.
thank you, contributions.
Contributions.
Okay,
Just one, I mean,
and
most of them
why
are.
do you think that? Because of the entity that was hit tonight?
Hmm.
Okay. I'll just speak for myself. I'm unlikely to budge much, but that's just my opinion.
I might budge down. That's kind of where,
Just,
I think that's where you're coming from, right?
just to let you guys know, Ralph just sent me a text saying Long Island Finance Committee approved their request for the radio upgrade.
Yeah.
I can't wait till we can say our finance committee approved it, then we.
That's the thing that I was gonna ask about, I think the board needs to really seriously look at hiring a committee. I gather, not hiring, but to, appoint a committee to do the budget, sorry, said that wrong. And then, work with, the bookkeeper and the town administrator to gather the information, and then possibly, once the information is gathered and there's a habit of gathering that certain information, it'll be easier to get that information, like the information that Bob wants. Once it's started and compiled for the previous years, going on like that would be easy to get those numbers, or easier. But it's the time and the effort that, you know.
Yeah, I
It's
agree.
very
This is not my forte. I just agreed to run these meetings. I'm not a finance guy, but, you know, we've done okay.
Yeah.
But I think talking about it as a select board and a community is probably it's time. Good.
So Bob sort of started off with a question about our bottom line. You know, here, we don't have the school budget in there, so it's hard to tell.
Yeah.
But right now, is it correct that we are not increasing the budget beyond the budget last year?
Right now, that's.
Right now, it's quite a bit lower.
It is.
And that includes the increased debt service and everything?
Yeah, so as it stands right now, last year's budget was $3,729,000 and change. This year's to date is $3,557,000.
Is that after tonight's changes?
So, and then you add a couple $1,000 from tonight's changes, so it's
180,
It's-
160.
4.5% lower than it was last year.
But we gave the capital budget a big punch towards the end of the budget session last year for paving, stone war, and some other stuff.
And that's-
I remember even Herb stood up and said he agreed with what we were doing with capital. And I was like,
Capital is
"Shock."
where you would have a drastic.
Well, and we're not putting tons of money away in some of those accounts.
We're not, yeah, that's the risk of kicking the can down the road.
And I would add, when you said paving, gravel roads as well, we need to pay attention to.
Anything else for tonight? Thank you.
Even though I'm moving off the gravel road.
Pretty good.
All right.
8:10.
Nice job, Mark.
8:10.
Very much, Adjourn. Thank you.
Do
So
we need-
moved.
Second.
Do we have-
Second, okay.
So we do have